being a young kid from Oklahoma and having been only in musical theater and theater for a fairly short time by the time I got to New York, I was already in awe of Bob Fosse, and I had the opportunity to audition for his Broadway show called Dancin', which ran on Broadway for about 5.5 years, I think. And I got into the show, and we had a rehearsal with him. I did not audition for him originally. I auditioned for the dance captains and for Gwen Verdon. And we had a rehearsal with him at one point, and it was my first time to be in a room with him and to actually meet him. And he didn't say much to me for the whole morning of the rehearsal, but the lunch break came around. And everyone kind of left to go out to eat. We were at the Minskoff Studios in Times Square, New York. And I had gone to the change room to change my clothes, was walking back down the hall towards the studio, and coming towards me, lo and behold, was Bob Fosse. So I got very nervous, and because I realized it was just the two of us in the hall at the time, I was going to have to actually speak to him now. And we acknowledged each other as we walked past each other in the hall, and then as I was going on towards the studio, a voice from behind me, his voice said, "Hey, Bill, would you like to go to lunch?" And I said, well, of course. So I met him at the China Bowl, which is next to Sardi's, in Times Square was, and we proceeded to have lunch. And that was my first experience with him. And there were many other rehearsals after that, and also I got to do Sweet Charity, the revival in 1986 with Debbie Allen and Annie Reinking, and then also was in the national tour of that production. And on that production, when we opened at the National Theatre in Washington, D.C., that was the night that he passed away, and he was with us at that time. But in the interim, I'd had really great experiences with him. In rehearsal, also he'd invite cast members, the cast out to his house to party for weekends and whatever. So I was always in awe of him, though. I was always in awe of his extraordinary talent, and I particularly appreciated the way that he treated the dancer. He loved dancers, but he treated us as actors. In fact, often he would address the stage management in rehearsal, and he'd say, okay, call the actors into rehearsal, please, as opposed to saying the dancers. And it was not that that was any different, except it was his approach in the way that he worked with us that was different. He certainly worked in cleaning the steps and cleaning the choreography and in perfecting his style of dance, but it was more important that we understood what we were dancing about and who we were as we were dancing, what we were thinking about as we were dancing. And one of my favorite times with him was during a rehearsal of the number Dancin' Man, I Want to Be a Dancin' Man, which took place opening the second act of Dancin'. And the number, for some reason, was falling a little flat. And so he called us into rehearsal and proceeded for the better part of the day to try to clean the number, thinking that that was perhaps what was wrong. So we worked very diligently for many hours on a lot of dance specifics. And after a while, I got very frustrated, and he threw something across the room. I can't remember exactly what. I don't think it was a chair or another dancer, but he was very upset with himself and with us because he couldn't get us to dance. He couldn't get us to do what he wanted us to do. And suddenly it dawned on him that maybe we should go back and listen to the lyrics, the same lyrics that we had been singing every night, many of us for a year or two at that point. And so we did. We went line by line through the lyric, and in the process of doing that, a very simple lyric, by the way, but in the process of doing that, we all started understanding that what this number was about our love of dance, and also about anyone who has a love for anything that they do in their life and how important that can be. So what it did for us is it allowed us to listen to the number anew. So when the curtain opened that night and we performed Dancin' Man, the audience went crazy. And the number was, yes, cleaner, but more importantly, the 15 of us on stage performing it were all of one mind. And that was Bob Fosse, the director, at work at that point. So he focused the number not only physically, but mentally and emotionally for all of us. So when we were singing the number, we were actually hearing what we were saying, and we all had a similar understanding of it again. It was kind of renewed for us, and subsequently the number sailed. So that was one of my favorite times with him, to see him get to that place of extreme frustration with the art that he knew best, dancing, and with dancers whom he loved more than anything, and to see him figure it out, and to realize once again that really the best way to a good performance sometimes is the simplest way. And so it was that subtext of the lyric that he put back into our heads.